The tiny fingers traced the scar before DeMarco Washington could pull away. 3 inches of raised tissue running from temple to jaw, a roadmap of violence he'd spent 15 years trying to forget. The touch was feather-light, impossibly gentle, and it came from a child he'd never met but whose face he'd memorized from stolen glances at social media photos on burner phones in the dead of night. "Daddy had the same one," the little girl whispered, her voice barely cutting through the Arizona desert wind that whipped across the clubhouse lot. DeMarco's knees hit gravel. 6'3" of leather and muscle collapsing like a building with its foundation kicked out. The morning sun hammered down on Prescott's outskirts, heat already building at 7 a.m., but all DeMarco felt was the cold spreading through his chest as he stared into eyes he recognized. His brother's eyes. In his brother's daughter's face. A niece he'd watched grow up through pixels and distance and cowardice. "What's your name, sweetheart?" His voice came out rough, broken glass over sandpaper. "Zaria." She swayed on her feet, pink jacket torn at the shoulder, knees scraped raw and bleeding through shredded leggings. Dirt streaked her face, mixing with tear tracks. She clutched a stuffed rabbit missing one ear like it was the only solid thing left in her world. "Are you one of the bad men?" "No, baby. I'm not bad." DeMarco forced himself to breathe, to think past the roaring in his ears. "Where's your daddy? Where's your mama?" Zaria's chin trembled, and DeMarco knew, he knew before she said it, that whatever came next would destroy him. The car went off the road. Near the big rocks. Mommy said run and find help. She said find the bikers. She said my daddy used to know bikers, that they'd help us. Her voice cracked. "Daddy's bleeding. He's bleeding from the same place as your scar." The world tilted. DeMarco reached out to steady himself against the fence, his hand shaking so hard the chain link rattled. "What's your daddy's name?" "Kendrick Washington." Time stopped. The desert went silent. Even the ever-present wind died, leaving nothing but the sound of DeMarco's heart trying to break through his ribs. Kendrick. His baby brother. The kid he'd left bleeding in a Flagstaff hospital 14 years ago when the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club called and DeMarco chose brotherhood over blood. The brother who'd survived that night but cut DeMarco out of his life completely. The firefighter DeMarco tracked from digital shadows, watching him build a beautiful family while DeMarco built walls so high nothing could get through. Nothing except this. Except Zaria. Except a child's desperate plea and a matching scar that proved blood still mattered, even after 14 years of silence. Before DeMarco could form words, Zaria stepped closer. Her hand lifted again, tiny fingers finding his scar with heartbreaking precision. She traced it like she'd done this before, like she knew the exact path it followed. "Daddy told me his scar means he survived something hard. That brave people get scars." Her eyes met his, too old for a 6-year-old face. "Does yours mean you're brave too?" DeMarco couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. This massive man, road captain of the Iron Wolves, enforcer and negotiator and the one brother nobody crossed, brought to his knees by 70 pounds of terrified child who didn't know she'd just shattered every defense he'd spent a decade and a half building. "Uncle?" Zaria's voice got smaller. "Are you my uncle?" "Daddy said I had an uncle somewhere, but he never told me your name." "Yeah, baby." DeMarco's voice broke completely. "Yeah, I'm your Uncle DeMarco. And I'm gonna save your daddy. I promise you that right now. I'm gonna save both your parents." He pulled her close, this niece who should hate him, who should run from the man who abandoned her father. But Zaria wrapped her arms around his neck and held on like he was salvation instead of the biggest mistake Kendrick Washington ever made. DeMarco's phone was out before he finished standing, Zaria tucked against his chest, her blood soaking into his shirt. 3 calls. That's all it would take to mobilize an army. 911 first. Vehicle accident, Highway 89A near Oak Creek Canyon, going off the embankment near the Red Rock formations. 2 adults trapped, injuries unknown, one child rescued. This is DeMarco Washington with the Iron Wolves MC. We're heading to the site now. He rattled off the location details Zarya had given him, her fragmented directions pieced together through terror. Second call. Javon, I need every wolf within 50 miles. Now. It's family. His club president, Javon Thorne Cross, didn't ask questions. When DeMarco said family, the club moved. That was the code. That was the bond. Third call. Marcus, grab your trauma kit. Vehicle accident, possible entrapment, critical injuries. I need you ready to move in 5 minutes. Marcus, Doc Hayes, former Army combat surgeon turned Iron Wolf medic, never questioned a call-out. He'd seen enough war to know when every second counted. DeMarco carried Zarya into the clubhouse, setting her on the bar while he grabbed the first aid kit. Her knees needed cleaning, bandaging, but his hands shook so hard he nearly dropped the antiseptic. Hold still, sweetheart. This is gonna sting. He worked as gently as 240 pounds of scar tissue and regret could manage, cleaning gravel from torn skin while Zarya bit her lip and didn't make a sound. You're tough, he murmured. Just like your daddy. Kendrick was the toughest kid I ever knew. Why don't you see him anymore? Zarya's question hit like a chain across the face, the same weapon that gave DeMarco his scar all those years ago. Because I made a mistake. A big one. And I've been too scared to fix it. Honesty felt like pulling glass from a wound, but she deserved truth. But I'm gonna fix it today. Starting right now. Engines roared outside. The Iron Wolves assembled faster than DeMarco had ever seen, bikes filling the lot, brothers appearing like they'd been waiting for this call their whole lives. Javon burst through the door first, silver beard and tactical precision, taking in the scene instantly. That her? Javon's voice dropped softer than most people knew it could go. My niece. Zarya. DeMarco's hand stayed on her shoulder, anchoring himself. Her parents are trapped in a vehicle down an embankment off 89A. We're running out of time. Marcus appeared next, trauma kit slung over his shoulder, eyes already assessing Zarya's injuries. She good to travel? Scraped knees, probably dehydrated, definitely in shock. But she's the only witness. She's coming with us. If you're watching this and your heart is already breaking, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story gets harder before it gets better, and I need you here with me for all of it. Because what happens next at that crash site will test everything DeMarco thought he knew about family, sacrifice, and the cost of second chances. I promise you'll want to see this through. Now let me tell you about the race against time that followed. Dante Vex Monroe arrived on a blacked-out Harley, demolitions expert and crisis response specialist, the wolf you called when situations went sideways. Isaiah Creed Parker pulled in 30 seconds later, former search and rescue, the man who knew Oak Creek Canyon's terrain better than the park rangers. They spread maps across the bar, Zarya perched on a stool, pointing with trembling fingers at landmarks she'd passed. The big red rocks shaped like bells. The place where the road curves really tight. The broken fence. Cathedral Rock area, Creed confirmed, marking the map. Multiple drop-offs, 30 to 50 feet down. Tourist traffic heavy on weekends. If an RV forced them off. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. How long ago? Marcus asked Zarya directly, kneeling to her level. Mommy's watch said 7:15 when she told me to run. I ran for a really long time. I got lost. DeMarco checked his phone. 8:43. Nearly 90 minutes since impact. 90 minutes of Kendrick and his wife Amara trapped, bleeding, waiting for help that should have arrived an hour ago. Why didn't someone report it? Javon's question hung heavy. Canyon walls block cell signal in spots. If they went over in a dead zone, and no one saw it happen. Creed shook his head. They could be down there for hours before anyone notices the guardrail damage. DeMarco's blood turned to ice water. Then we move. Now. They loaded into trucks, bikes too loud for a child in shock. Javon drove, DeMarco in the passenger seat, Zarya between them, her small hand gripping DeMarco's with surprising strength. The convoy of iron wolves followed, a line of chrome and leather and loyalty heading into the canyon. "Tell me about your daddy," DeMarco said softly, needing to keep Zarya talking, keeping her present. "What's he like?" "He saves people. He's a firefighter. He runs into fires when everyone else runs out." Pride filled her voice. "He says heroes don't think about being scared. They just think about who needs help." The words hit DeMarco like fists. Kendrick had become exactly what DeMarco should have been. While DeMarco chose the club and the code and the brotherhood that demanded he leave Kendrick bleeding in that hospital, his baby brother had chosen to become someone who ran toward danger to save strangers. "He's right," DeMarco managed. "That's exactly what heroes do. Mommy says you and Daddy used to be best friends. She says you had the same scar because you got hurt together." Zarya's eyes found his. "But Daddy doesn't talk about you. He gets sad when Mommy brings it up." 14 years of silence had a weight. It pressed on DeMarco's chest, making breathing hurt. "Yeah, baby. We got hurt together. And then I left, and I think that hurt him worse than any scar." "Are you gonna leave again after you save them?" The question nearly broke him. "No. I'm not leaving. Not ever again. I'm gonna be the uncle you deserve. If your daddy lets me." "He will." Zarya said it with the absolute certainty only children possess. "Because you promised. And promises matter." Route 89A curved through red rock formations that tourists paid thousands to photograph. DeMarco barely saw them. His eyes scanned for broken guardrails, skid marks, any sign of the accident that had stolen his brother from him before he could make amends. "There!" Creed shouted from the truck behind them, pointing. Javon hit the brakes. Fresh skid marks carved black lines across asphalt. The guardrail sagged, metal twisted outward, the gap wide enough for a vehicle to fit through. DeMarco was out before the truck fully stopped, moving to the edge, looking down. 30 feet below, wedged against a boulder, a white SUV rested at a sickening angle. Hood crumpled, passenger side crushed, rear end hanging over open air. And even from this distance, even through the glare of morning sun on shattered glass, DeMarco could see the dark stain spreading beneath the vehicle. Gasoline. Or blood. Or both. "Call it in," Javon ordered, already radioing fire rescue and highway patrol. "Get medical choppers in the air." Marcus appeared at DeMarco's shoulder, binoculars out, scanning the wreckage. His face went grim. "Vehicle's unstable. One wrong move, it slides another 100 feet straight down. And that fuel leak means fire risk is critical. Can we get them out before rescue arrives?" DeMarco heard the desperation in his own voice. "Maybe." Marcus lowered the binoculars. "But it's gonna be tight, dangerous, and we might only get one shot before that whole thing goes up or down. Then we take the shot." DeMarco turned to find Zarya standing at the truck, Javon's hand on her shoulder keeping her back from the edge. "Stay with Thorne, baby. I'm going down to get your parents. You promise?" Her voice carried across the distance. "I promise." DeMarco started down the embankment, Marcus and Vex right behind him, carrying rope and trauma equipment. The descent was treacherous, loose rock and sharp drops, the kind of terrain that broke ankles and ended in disaster. DeMarco didn't slow. His brother was down there. Bleeding. Waiting. And this time, DeMarco wouldn't leave. The SUV looked worse up close. Driver's side door crumpled inward, windshield spiderwebbed and partially gone, metal twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist. DeMarco reached the rear passenger window first, peering inside. Amara was conscious, pinned from the waist down by the collapsed dashboard. Blood soaked her shirt, her face pale and slick with sweat. Her eyes found DeMarco's, confusion and hope and pain mixing. "Who are you?" she gasped. "DeMarco. Kendrick's brother. Zaria found me. She's safe. I'm getting you both out." "Kendrick." Amara's gaze shifted to the driver's seat. DeMarco moved around the vehicle's rear, boots slipping on gasoline-slicked rock, and looked through the shattered driver's window. Kendrick slumped against the deployed airbag, unconscious, head lolled to the side. Blood ran from his temple down his jaw, following the exact path of the scar he'd gotten 14 years ago. The scar that matched DeMarco's. Fresh blood over old tissue, like history repeating itself in the worst way possible. Kendrick. DeMarco reached through, fingers finding his brother's neck, searching for a pulse. There. Freddy, too fast, but there. Marcus appeared beside him, already assessing. Skull fracture, same location as the original injury. Possible traumatic brain injury. He's breathing but unresponsive. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking pupils, checking spine alignment. We move him wrong, we could paralyze him or kill him. Vex crouched by the vehicle's undercarriage, examining the boulder placement and fuel leak. When he stood, his expression said everything DeMarco didn't want to hear. "We've got two problems," Vex reported. "One, this vehicle is balanced on maybe 4 inches of rock. Any weight shift could send it over the edge. 2, fuel tank is ruptured and actively leaking. Fumes are building. Any spark, any friction, we get ignition." Marcus checked Amara's vitals through the passenger window, then returned to DeMarco. His face was stone, but his eyes carried the weight of impossible math. "Fire rescue is 25 minutes out minimum," Marcus said quietly. "This vehicle won't hold that long. The fuel situation is critical. We need to move them now. Both of them. We get both of them." DeMarco's voice came out harder than he intended. "DeMarco." Marcus gripped his shoulder. "Listen to me. We can stabilize one of them, maybe extract them safely before this whole thing becomes a fireball or takes a dive. But not both. The vehicle won't hold for 2 extractions. You need to choose. Your brother or his wife. Who do we save first?" The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. DeMarco had come here to save Kendrick, to make up for leaving him 14 years ago, to prove he could choose right this time. "There has to be another way," DeMarco said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew the truth. He'd lived on the road long enough to know when the math didn't add up. When the time ran out. When the choice became binary. Save Kendrick first, the brother he'd abandoned, the man he'd spent 14 years missing. Or save Amara first, the woman his brother loved, the mother of the niece who'd trusted DeMarco with a promise. Marcus waited, saying nothing, because there was nothing to say. Vex checked his watch. Somewhere up above, Zaria waited with Javon, trusting her uncle DeMarco to bring her parents home. And DeMarco stood between his past and his future, between redemption and repetition, with seconds to decide. He moved to the driver's side window, staring at Kendrick's unconscious face. Blood matted his hair, the scar standing out stark against pale skin. The little brother DeMarco had protected as a kid, fought beside as a teen, abandoned as a man. "I'm sorry, Vic," DeMarco whispered, using the childhood nickname he hadn't spoken in 14 years. "I'm sorry for Flagstaff. I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for all of it." His hand found Kendrick's shoulder, the only contact he could make without risking spinal damage. "But I know what you'd want me to do. You became a firefighter. You run into burning buildings to save people. You put others first. That's who you are." DeMarco's voice cracked. "So I'm gonna do what you'd do. I'm gonna make the choice you'd make. Because that's what heroes do. And you're the hero here, little brother. Not me. He turned to Marcus, tears cutting tracks through road dust on his face. Save Amara first. She's conscious. She's got better chances. Get her out, get her stable, get her up to the road. DeMarco. Kendrick would never forgive me if I chose him over his wife. Over Zaria's mother. The words came out steady despite everything inside DeMarco screaming. He'd want his daughter to have her mom. So we save Amara first. That's the call. Marcus held his gaze for 3 seconds, reading the certainty there, then nodded. All right. Let's move. They worked with precision born of combat medicine and crisis response. Marcus stabilized Amara's chest and abdomen, packing wounds, controlling bleeding as much as possible without proper equipment. Vex set up anchor points, rigging a rope system to extract her without jarring the vehicle. DeMarco stayed at the driver's window, hand on Kendrick's shoulder, whispering promises his brother couldn't hear. You fight, Vic. You stay with us. I'm coming back for you. I swear to God, I'm coming back this time. The extraction took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of careful cutting, of Amara screaming as they freed her crushed legs, of the vehicle groaning and shifting 2 inches closer to the edge. When they finally lifted her clear, strapped to a backboard, DeMarco saw Marcus's face and knew the internal damage was worse than he'd let on. Go, DeMarco ordered. Get her up top, get her airlifted. I'm staying with Kendrick. The vehicle shifted, Vex warned. We've got 10 minutes. Maybe less. If it goes, you go with it. Then we better work fast. DeMarco was already moving to the driver's door, examining how to extract his brother without the equipment they needed. Marcus started the climb up with Amara, calling out vital signs to Javon on the radio. Vex stayed, setting up new anchor points, calculating angles. And DeMarco knelt beside the destroyed driver's door, staring at his unconscious brother, and prayed to a god he hadn't spoken to since their mother's funeral. The vehicle groaned. Metal scraped against stone. The SUV slipped another 3 inches. Vex's radio crackled. Fire rescue is 15 minutes out. They didn't have 15 minutes. We go now, DeMarco decided. We get him out now or we don't get him out at all. What happened next would either save Kendrick Washington or kill them both. And honestly, DeMarco thought as he reached through the shattered window to carefully support his brother's head, if they went down together, maybe that was the ending they'd earned. But Zaria's voice echoed in his memory. You promised. And promises matter. So DeMarco Washington, road captain of the Iron Wolves, the man who'd chosen wrong 14 years ago, prepared to choose right today. Even if it killed him. I need you to do something for me right now. If this story is gripping you, if you're feeling what I'm feeling, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you'd do in DeMarco's position. Would you save your brother or his wife first? Because your engagement helps me keep bringing you stories like this, stories that matter, that make you think and feel. And turn on those notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Because the rescue attempt that follows will leave you breathless. Trust me. Now back to the canyon. Vex braced against the boulder, rope system ready, watching for any sign the vehicle was about to slide. DeMarco and Marcus, who'd returned after handing Amara off to the medical team at the top, positioned themselves at the driver's door. We need to immobilize his spine manually, Marcus instructed. I'll support his head and neck. You ease him out through the door. Slow. Steady. Any sudden movement could sever his spinal cord. Understood. DeMarco's hands were steady now. No room for shaking. No room for fear. Just the work. They cut the seatbelt first, the blade slicing through with a snap that made the vehicle shudder. Kendrick slumped forward, held only by Marcus's grip on his head. DeMarco slid his hands under his brother's shoulders, feeling how light Kendrick was, how breakable. On three, Marcus counted. 1, 2, 3. They moved as one unit, sliding Kendrick's unconscious body through the door opening with glacial slowness. The SUV groaned, tilting, and for one heart-stopping second, DeMarco thought they'd lost their window. But the vehicle settled, and they kept moving. Kendrick cleared the door. They lowered him onto the backboard Vex had ready. Marcus secured the head blocks, the straps, everything needed to keep Kendrick's spine immobile. Through it all, Kendrick didn't stir, didn't wake, just bled from the scar he shared with his older brother. "We're clear," Vex announced. "Let's move before." The SUV's grinding screech cut him off. The vehicle lurched, slid 6 inches, then a foot, metal shrieking against stone. Gasoline smell intensified, fumes rising in visible waves. "Go, go, go." Marcus grabbed one end of the backboard, DeMarco the other, and they ran. The embankment became a nightmare of loose rock and steep drops, 2 men carrying a third on a backboard that caught on every bush and stone. Behind them, the SUV's death rattle grew louder, metal giving way, physics finally asserting dominance. DeMarco's boot slipped on gasoline-slick rock. He went down hard, knee slamming into sharp stone, but he didn't let go of the backboard. Didn't let go of his brother. Vex grabbed his arm, hauled him up, and they kept climbing. The explosion wasn't Hollywood dramatic. No fireball, no mushroom cloud. Just a sudden rush of flame and black smoke as the ruptured fuel tank ignited, the heat blast hitting them from behind like a physical force. The SUV tumbled, rolling down the remaining ravine, crashing into the canyon floor 100 feet below with the sound of God's own wrath. They reached the top 30 seconds later, gasping, covered in dirt and blood and soot. DeMarco collapsed at the roadside, hands still gripping Kendrick's backboard, watching the smoke rise from below. Zarya broke free from Javon's grip and ran to them. "Uncle DeMarco. Daddy. Is Daddy okay?" Medical helicopter rotors beat the air overhead, the bird already landing to take Kendrick. Paramedics swarmed, transferring him from backboard to gurney, shouting vital signs and medical codes DeMarco didn't understand. He caught one phrase that mattered. Pulse steady. Breathing stable. Possible recovery if we move fast. "Go with them," Javon ordered, gripping DeMarco's shoulder. "We'll bring Zarya to the hospital. But your brother needs you there when he wakes up." If he wakes up hung unspoken in the air. DeMarco climbed into the helicopter, crouching beside the gurney, hand finding Kendrick's. The bird lifted off, and through the window, DeMarco saw the iron wolves standing at the roadside, a line of leather and loyalty, watching their brother fly away with the family he'd lost and maybe found again. The flight to Flagstaff Medical Center took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of watching machines breathe for his brother, of paramedics working with controlled urgency, of DeMarco whispering apologies Kendrick couldn't hear. The ER swallowed Kendrick the moment they landed. Doctors descended, wheeling him away through doors DeMarco couldn't follow. A nurse directed him to a waiting room, handed him forms to fill out, asked about insurance and next of kin and emergency contacts. DeMarco stared at the form. Next of kin. He wasn't next of kin. He'd given up that right 14 years ago. Javon arrived an hour later with Zarya, who launched herself at DeMarco like he was the only stable thing in a tilting world. He caught her, held her, and felt every wall he'd ever built crumbling to dust. "Mommy?" Zarya whispered into his shirt. "Surgery. They're fixing her up. The doctors say she's gonna make it." Javon settled into the chair beside DeMarco. "Ruptured spleen, broken pelvis, some internal bleeding. But she's stable. They're calling it a miracle. One miracle down. One to go." The neurosurgeon appeared 3 hours later. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, 50-something, kind eyes, the bearing of a man who delivered hard news professionally. DeMarco stood, Zarya in his arms, Javon and Marcus flanking him, the iron wolves filling the waiting room with quiet support. "Kendrick Washington's family?" Dr. Tanaka asked. I'm his brother. This is his daughter. DeMarco's voice came out steadier than he felt. Mr. Washington suffered a severe skull fracture and subdural hematoma. There's significant brain swelling. We've induced a medical coma to reduce intracranial pressure and give his brain time to heal. Is he gonna be okay? Zarya asked, her voice so small. Dr. Tanaka knelt to her level. Your daddy is very strong. But he's very hurt. The next few days are going to be really important. We need to wait and watch and hope his brain heals itself. Can we see him? DeMarco asked. Immediate family only. 5 minutes. DeMarco hesitated. We haven't spoken in 14 years. I don't know if I count as. You're here, Dr. Tanaka interrupted gently. You brought him in. You saved his life. You count. 5 minutes. The ICU was a place of machines and monitors, beeping and humming in rhythm with lives hanging by threads. Kendrick lay in Bay 7, bandages wrapping his head, tubes running from his mouth and arms, the strong firefighter reduced to broken flesh. DeMarco approached slowly, Zarya's hand in his. The matching scars were visible, side by side, one silvered with age, one fresh with blood. Proof that history repeated, that some wounds echoed through time. Daddy looks scary, Zarya whispered. He's hurt, baby. But he's fighting. Just like you did when you ran through the desert to find help. DeMarco lifted her up so she could see Kendrick better. Tell him you love him. They say people in comas can sometimes hear. Zarya leaned close to Kendrick's ear. I love you, Daddy. Uncle DeMarco saved you. He kept his promise. So you have to keep your promise too. You promised you'd always come back to me. So come back. The heart monitor beeped steadily, unchanging. But DeMarco thought, maybe hoped, maybe imagined, that Kendrick's fingers twitched. 3 days passed in that hospital. 3 days of Zarya sleeping in chairs, of iron wolves rotating through to bring food and support, of DeMarco haunting the ICU waiting room like a ghost seeking redemption. Amara woke up on day 2. Groggy, in pain, but alive and asking immediately about Kendrick and Zarya. DeMarco brought Zarya to her room, watched mother and daughter reunite with tears he didn't try to hide. You're DeMarco, Amara said when Zarya fell asleep curled against her in the hospital bed. Kendrick's brother. Yeah. DeMarco stood at the foot of the bed, keeping distance. I'm sorry we're meeting like this. I'm sorry for everything. Kendrick talks about you sometimes. Amara's voice was soft, rough from the breathing tube. Not often. But enough. He says he was angry for a long time. But then Zarya was born, and something changed. DeMarco waited, barely breathing. He said he finally understood why you left that night in Flagstaff. You had brothers depending on you. Loyalty you'd sworn. He said it took becoming a firefighter to understand that sometimes you have to make impossible choices. That there's no right answer. Just the choice you can live with. The words hit like absolution DeMarco didn't deserve. He forgave me. About 5 years ago, I think. He just didn't know how to reach out. Pride. Or fear that too much time had passed. Amara's eyes found his. You saved me first. Before Kendrick. Why? Because that's what Kendrick would have wanted. He's a hero. Heroes choose others first. I figured if I was gonna make an impossible choice, I should make it like he would. DeMarco's voice cracked. Even if it killed me to leave him down there unconscious and bleeding again. Thank you, Amara whispered. For giving my daughter her mother. For making the hard choice. For being the man Kendrick needed you to be. On day 4, Dr. Tanaka lightened Kendrick's sedation. The medical team watched monitors, looking for signs of response, of awareness, of brain function that meant Kendrick Washington might still be in there. DeMarco sat beside the bed, Zarya in his lap, both watching Kendrick's face for any flicker of movement. "Come on, little brother," DeMarco murmured. "You don't get to leave before I tell you I'm sorry to your face. You don't get to leave Zarya. You don't get to leave me. Not after I just got you back." Kendrick's eyelids fluttered. "Daddy?" Zarya leaned forward. Kendrick's fingers twitched. His breathing changed, the rhythm shifting from machine-controlled to something more natural. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening. "Zarya?" Kendrick's voice came out a rasp, rough from days of breathing tubes. "Daddy!" Zarya was crying, laughing, reaching for him. "Where?" Kendrick's gaze swept the room, confusion giving way to memory. "The accident. Amara. Where's Amara?" "She's okay," DeMarco said quickly. 2 floors up. "She's gonna be fine. You both are." Kendrick's eyes landed on DeMarco, really seeing him for the first time. Confusion flickered across his bruised face. "DeMarco?" "Yeah, Vic. It's me." "How, why?" Kendrick's hand lifted weakly, fingers finding the bandages on his head, then touching the scar beneath them. "The old one. The one that matched his brother's. Zarya found me," DeMarco explained. "After the crash. She walked 2 miles through the desert and found my clubhouse. She told me you were hurt. That you needed help. So I came." "You came," Kendrick repeated, like testing the words for truth. "I made a promise to Zarya that I'd save you. And I keep my promises now." DeMarco's throat tightened. "I know I didn't before. I know I left you in a hospital 14 years ago and chose wrong. But this time, I chose right. At least, I hope I did." Silence stretched between them, 14 years of anger and hurt and unspoken apologies filling the space. Then Kendrick said, "Zarya told me you saved Amara first. That the vehicle was going to explode, and you chose to get her out before me." DeMarco nodded, unable to speak. "That's what I would have done," Kendrick whispered. "If I'd been conscious. If I'd been able to choose. I would have told you to save her first. Save my wife. Save Zarya's mother. I know. That's why I did it." Tears spilled down Kendrick's face, mixing with blood and bandages. "You made the right choice, DeMarco. For once, you made the choice I needed you to make. I'm sorry." The words broke out of DeMarco like a dam bursting. "I'm sorry for Flagstaff. For leaving. For 14 years of being too scared and too proud to call. I'm sorry for all of it. I forgave you years ago," Kendrick said. "I just didn't know how to tell you." DeMarco collapsed forward, forehead pressing against the hospital bed rail, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd held back for over a decade. Zarya's small hand patted his head, trying to comfort the uncle who'd saved her world. "Can we start over?" Kendrick asked quietly. "Not forget what happened. But build something new from here." DeMarco lifted his head, met his brother's eyes, and saw forgiveness he didn't deserve but would spend the rest of his life earning. "I'd like that. If you'll let me be part of Zarya's life. Part of your family." "Uncle DeMarco," Zarya interrupted. "You're already family. You kept your promise. Heroes keep promises." Kendrick smiled despite the pain, despite everything. "She's right. Your family, DeMarco. You always were. I just forgot for a while. We both did." 3 months later, DeMarco taught Zarya to ride a bike in Kendrick and Amara's Sedona driveway. Kendrick watched from the porch, still recovering from his injuries, his firefighting career over but his life intact. Amara sat beside him, walking with a cane now but walking. Zarya fell on her 3rd attempt, scraping her knee on the pavement. DeMarco reached her in 2 strides, expecting tears, but found her staring at the blood with something like wonder. Now I have a scar like you and Daddy, she announced. DeMarco cleaned the scrape, applied a bandage, and knelt to her level. You know what I learned, Zaria? Scars don't make you brave. Being brave is what gives you scars. But the real courage, the kind that matters most, is saying sorry when you're wrong. Forgiving when you're hurt. Choosing love when hate is easier. That's what heroes do. Zaria hugged him, her small arms barely reaching around his neck. I'm glad you're my uncle. I'm glad too, baby. Kendrick appeared beside them, limping slightly but standing tall. You know, this scar of mine. He touched the mark on his face. I used to hate it. It reminded me of the night you left. And now? DeMarco asked. Now it reminds me of the day you came back. Of the promise you kept. Of the man you've become. Kendrick gripped his brother's shoulder. We've both got the same scar, earned the same way. Protecting someone else. That's who we are, DeMarco. Both of us. DeMarco looked at his brother, at the niece between them, at the family he'd lost and found and would never leave again, and felt something he hadn't experienced in 14 years. Peace. Before we close this story, I need something from you. If this touched you, if it made you feel something real, leave a comment sharing your own story of forgiveness or reconciliation. Your words might inspire someone else who needs to hear that it's not too late. And subscribe so you don't miss the next story that will move you. Because we're building a community here of people who believe in second chances, in redemption, in the power of choosing right even when it's hard. Hit that notification bell. Be part of something that matters. Now let me leave you with this. 5 years later, Zaria sat in the Iron Wolves clubhouse garage, 11 years old, hands covered in grease, helping Uncle DeMarco rebuild an engine. The clubhouse had become her second home, the Iron Wolves her extended family, the road captain her hero. Uncle DeMarco, she asked, looking up from the carburetor they were working on. Tell me the real story. About how you and Daddy got those scars. DeMarco could have lied. Could have sanitized it. But Zaria deserved truth, just like she deserved it that first day when she asked if he was one of the bad men. So he told her. About Flagstaff. About the territory dispute and the chain and the violence. About leaving Kendrick in the hospital. About 14 years of silence and regret. About the crash and the impossible choice and the reconciliation that followed. Even when you make really big mistakes, Zaria said when he finished, you can still fix them. Even after a long time. If both people are willing to try, DeMarco confirmed. If both people choose forgiveness over pride. If both people remember that love matters more than being right. Zaria went back to work on the engine, satisfied with the answer. DeMarco watched her, this incredible kid who'd saved his life without even knowing it, and thanked God for the morning she'd stumbled into his clubhouse with scraped knees and desperate hope. Kendrick appeared in the garage doorway, no longer firefighting but teaching new recruits the skills that saved lives. You two gonna finish that rebuild, or should I come back later? Daddy. Zaria ran to him, hugging tight, still young enough to not care about grease-covered hands ruining his shirt. Hey, princess. Kendrick hugged her back, then met DeMarco's eyes over her head. No words needed. Just the understanding between brothers who'd lost each other, found each other, and would never let go again. That night, Kendrick and DeMarco sat on the porch of the Sedona house, watching sunset paint the red rocks in shades of fire. Zaria slept inside, Amara reading beside her bed, the family complete and whole and alive. You know what the scar means to me now? DeMarco asked quietly. What's that? It means I survived. It means I changed. It means I came back. It means I was forgiven. DeMarco touched the raised tissue on his face. It used to be my shame. Now it's my reminder that redemption is possible. That it's never too late to choose right. Kendrick nodded, touching his own matching scar. We both survived something hard. And we both came out the other side better for it. They sat in comfortable silence, two brothers with matching scars and matching second chances, watching the sun sink below the horizon. And DeMarco Washington, road captain of the Iron Wolves, former screw-up and current uncle and brother, felt something he'd never expected to feel again. Home. He felt home. The scars would always be there, visible proof of pain survived and mistakes made. But now they also proved something else. That bridges burned can be rebuilt. That time doesn't make forgiveness impossible, just harder. That promises made to children are sacred and unbreakable. That family, real family, doesn't give up. That love, in the end, is stronger than regret. And sometimes, just sometimes, tiny fingers tracing an old scar can change everything. One last thing before you go. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel needs. Someone who values real stories, real emotion, real truth. Subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me what this story meant to you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to make amends. Because every subscription, every like, every comment helps me keep bringing you stories that matter. Stories that inspire. Stories that remind us all that we're capable of redemption, no matter how far we've fallen. Don't just watch. Be part of this community. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, your scars tell a story. Make sure it ends with hope.